Hi, I'm Eve Young, Economics and Domestic Affairs Correspondent at the Jerusalem Post. In the past few days, there have been thousands of new signatories on letters calling to bring the hostages back, even at the expense of ending the war. They've come from various units. We're talking about we're talking about former pilots, pilots in reserves, people from the Navy, soldiers from intelligence units, and paratroopers. These letters have not outright called to refuse service, and many of the signatories are former reserve soldiers and not actively in reserves. But we're definitely seeing a really interesting groundswell of soldiers and former soldiers calling to put the hostages before the continuation of the war. In the studio with me today is Itamar, a soldier in reserves who signed a previous letter which said that there was a red line that your service said essentially that you would not serve past a certain line in order to fight for the hostages. So this is a previous letter. We should differentiate it from the letters we're seeing now. Your letter had a distinct call saying, if this happens, those signed in the letter will not continue to serve, while the letters we're seeing coming out in the past few days don't make that distinct message. We've brought you here because I think you can offer really valuable perspective on what brings someone who is a reservist, was a combat medic, rushed back to serve in the IDF on October 7th from abroad where you were studying. What brings someone so dedicated to fighting for this country to a situation where you feel you cannot do that anymore in the IDF? So please just give us like a little background first of how that happened.
Yeah, I just want to say regarding the letter that the letter does not say specifically what the red line is going to be. It says like for some of us the red line has been already crossed. For some of us it's just around the corner, and so there is no so where the red line is like a personal thing. So I was on October 7th. I'm Israeli. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, and I'm now in these days I'm doing my PhD in a U.S. university. And on October 7th, I was in my studies, and when everything happened, I was called up by my unit, and I had no questions about what should I do. Should I do now? There was this urgent feeling that that we have no choice, and that this is a war that was forced upon us, that we need to defend ourselves, and that we need to do everything that we can in order to bring back our hostages. So I left the semester, left my studies, and took a plane. I was with my wife, and she was a medical student back then, and now she already has her MD, and we both went back. She was volunteering in the hospital, and I was joining my unit. And in the first 2 months and a half of the war, I was serving in the West Bank. It was in uh, sorry, what's the detain
A detention camp.
a detention camp of Gazans, of arrested Gazans. It was a complex place to serve in, and but it was really clear what we're doing and why we're doing it, and I was serving there, and then I went back to my studies in the U.S. And then I went to another round, which was on the northern border with my unit. After that, my unit entered Lebanon. I I was already back in the in the States, and I wasn't able to join because I was teaching. So and I couldn't leave my students and tell them that I'm on reserve. And so
That was your service.
my service in the war, I served around 100 days, and which all of which was voluntary because I was abroad, so I didn't have to. I didn't have to get back, but it was clear to me that there is no that it is my duty and my privilege to do so.
And,
In
and
this,
then
yeah,
tell us what happens. How, like, I think we have heard so many stories and have a good understanding of that feeling of duty and privilege.
Yeah.
And then what pushes you to that point of saying it's my duty to refuse to continue to be part of this war?
So I have, first of all, I had and still have many questions about the government. I didn't vote for this government. I have questions about their plans. I have questions about basically almost everything that they do. But all of this was irrelevant because on the early days of the war, and I can't put like I can point to the specific time in which I realized that there is a problem. But anyway, for a year, more than a year, I postponed my questions and I said, I'm doing whatever I am asked to do because we need to defend our country. We need to defend our people. We need to bring our people home. And for me, what was the thing that basically led me to say that I'm in a sense, breaking this commitment was the hostages situation and understanding that continuing the military effort is not the way to bring them back. I think one of the major cracks was I was just getting back to the States after the summer. It was September 1st of 2024, and there was the announcement that Hersh Goldberg Polin and Carmel Gat and Eden Yerushalmi and Ori Danino and Almog Sarusi and Alex Dubanov were killed by Hamas people when there were soldiers getting close to their tunnel. And this is something I feared, and this is something that happened even before, but this was particularly difficult because those were the people who, or at least most of them, were supposed to get out in the deal that we have seen in January. They were in the humanitarian category, and and there was a deal which was rejected. We heard many stories about why by different people, but for me, this was, I think, the first one of them. I mean, I had many questions, but this was the one of the cracks that I said, like, I feel like continuing the war is not something that's going to bring them home, and I think that the people um who insist on continuing the war has other aims which do not include, at least not as a priority, bringing our hostages home. So this was the first thing. The second thing was when the deal that just happened, just ended, started. This was for me the time to say, if Israel is going to break this deal, I'm not going to. If I'm called up to serve in Gaza in the uh, re and to resume the fightings, I'm not gonna participate.
So that was your red
So
line,
for me, this was
essentially?
this was the red line, and I called my commander and I told him, and he said that personally he appreciated. He thinks he respects me, but like from organizational perspective, military perspective, this is something that they cannot tolerate, and I was dismissed from service. And also, I want to say, I didn't say that I'm not willing to serve.
You said
I
that you would not go into
I'm not
Gaza.
going to Gaza. I don't. So personally, I didn't feel comfortable saying that. For example, if I am deployed in the north, then I'm not going to defend people who live there. Or if I am deployed in the West Bank, which I disapprove of many things that Israel is doing in the West Bank, but still we need to defend people who live there. And also, also specifically with the West Bank, I felt like I had even more kind of important responsibility to serve there, because I was one of those who supported the deal, and the deal also means that many terrorists are getting out, And so it's, for me, it's part of the deal, saying like I'm in support of letting those terrorists to be freed in order to bring our hostages home. So I also need to
To defend
to
against.
yeah to defend, to prevent whatever those terrorists can do. So like I felt like personally, as someone with my political leanings, I felt like this is my own responsibility. So if I had been called up to serve in the West Bank, I didn't have any questions about it.
Something that we've heard in response to these letters,
Mhm.
or the letter that you're signed on, which explicitly says that you'll stop serving past a certain red line,
Mhm.
is kind of this question of like, what if everyone does this? What if all the soldiers in the IDF say that they won't serve?
Mhm.
What happens then? I think it's kind of a challenge of like, how are you willing to
Yeah.
be part of leaving the country defenseless? But do you have?
Yeah. So first of all, as I said, my refusal is very specific. I'm not refusing to serve in the army. I don't feel like uh, I have the I don't know, the moral shoulders to refuse to defend people in the north, in the West Bank, even in the Gaza. My family lives in, some of my family live in the Gaza envelope. So this was not the issue. The issue was a specific military aim, which I believe, and I believe that because I read and everything, but also because I'm listening to hostage families, and I'm listening to how they beg the government not to resume the fightings. And so I think this is not something I did in light head. This was something very difficult for me to do. I'm proud of being a reservist. I think it's my duty and it's my privilege to do so. Um, but I also think that, um, so when it comes to the question of what would happen if everyone would do it, we need to remind ourselves first that reservists are civilians as well. Okay, so it's not like we're not professional army. I'm not, and I'm a PhD student. I'm doing completely other things on my civilian hat, as it were. And so we are also civilians, and we are entitled for our political views. But refusing to serve is another thing. It's a step. It's a step. Something over and above just having a political view and stating it. And I think so. First of all, I think so. If we imagine, I don't know, uh, imagine that there would be a different government and they're going to be some peace plan or whatever, and they're going to evacuate some settlements. So are people going to refuse to serve? And so clearly, the answer is yes. Many people are going to refuse to do so. And also, I think that so refusing to serve is something that it's illegal. Like technically, I didn't refuse to serve. I was dismissed because I signed the letter. But like refusing to serve, refusing to do something that you were commanded to do, is illegal. So if someone does that, they need to face the repercussion. And when I'm doing that, I'm saying that I'm willing to face the repercussion of what I'm doing. So if so, like in that scenario in which people like they had been and like they will probably do will refuse to evacuate settlements, then they will also face the consequences. But also, it's important to know that also in also in the law and also in the military law, there is the notion of um, an unlawful, clearly, whatever. I don't remember. I don't know how to translate. פקודה בלתי חוקית בעליל.
A clearly unlawful order.
Such an order to go in and resume the war, for me, is such an unlawful command.
Because it risks the
Because
hostages.
it risks the hostages, and because there is another option. And because the government in no point. So I understand that there are costs here, and I understand that I don't have the intelligence that they have, and so on and so forth. I have very serious trust issues with the government on the matter of the hostages, and um, yeah, and like some of the hostage families say, we don't know what's going on in the negotiating rooms, but we do know that that Netanyahu or any other Israeli representative have never said that if Hamas is going to bring all of our hostages, all of them, then we are willing to end the war. This is something that no Israeli official have never said, and this is for me. This is something that makes the all of the military effort something that is a matter of choice and not a matter of um,
Necessity.
coercion necessity.
Itamar, thank you so much for joining us and giving us this perspective.
Thank you.